which means it punishes earnings, savings, and investment. So there is less production than there would be if we took the tax off. And then there's another component of it that also changes things a lot, and that is, you look at the numbers, 47% of the households don't pay income tax. 51% of the wage earners don't have a federal income tax liability. So we have, I believe, passed that point, that tipping point where once the majority of the American people figure out they can vote themselves benefits from the public treasury, on that day, democracy ceases to exist. And that fits the quote of name the people that headed you to that. So I want to change that. I want everybody to have some skin in the game. I want everybody to be a taxpayer. I want to tax the drug pushers, the pimps, and the prostitutes. They're working in the black market right now with cash. Let them come on, step up and be taxpayers. Actually, we can do this. We can untax the people, everybody, up to the poverty level. That's what the bill does. And it's not something I would have led with, but it's a piece of the bill that I think is important in getting it sold. And that's this, that there is what's called a prebate check that would go out under the bill, and it would be electronically transferred into the account of each household. And Health and Human Services has the capability of doing this, up to the poverty level. So to replace the sales tax that they would spend for normal living on up to the poverty level. I used to know some numbers on that, but it's been too long since I figured it out. But in any case, it makes everybody a taxpayer, and it is progressive to this extent. Those that lived, well, actually below the poverty level would actually get a little bit of supplement because they would get the check, the prebate check, up to the poverty level for the income, for the sales tax that they would pay. Those that are spending exactly at the poverty level would pay exactly zero federal sales tax. And of course, no IRS. IRS is gone. The federal income tax code is all gone. And the payroll tax is also gone. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, that all goes away. That's all replaced by a national sales tax. And then if you lived at twice the level of the poverty level is no tax, twice the level, you would pay half the rate of the maximum rate. And this is a rate that's calculated to be revenue neutral, and it's 23% embedded tax. So if you have let's say a $1 widget, you pay $1 for a widget, there would be 77 cents of that would be the widget, 23% of it would be the tax. But we need to remember that embedded in the cost of everything we buy is the tax structure that it takes to get it to the shelf. And so there's a federal income tax and an excise tax and payroll tax, all of those pieces built in. So if you take your $1 widget, 22 cents of that today is already built into the price. So competition drives the price of the things we purchase down by roughly 22%. You add the national sales tax back in, just end user on materials and labor. So if the plumber comes out to your house, you have to pay him for the plumbing materials that he uses. You have to also pay him for his services, labor, on the tax on that. But they get cheaper because the plumber doesn't have to collect the income tax. He's not sending that in. And there's not tax on the materials. Well, those would be tax on materials for going in that fashion, but it's end user. So if you're a farmer and you buy a new combine, there's no tax on it, no sales tax on it, because that's a business input, just like we would see it here today in the sales tax in Iowa. But if you buy a cap and put that on your head, if you actually do that, you would pay the tax on it. That's kind of how the structure works. So Bill Gates would probably pay, if he's the #1 consumer in America, would pay the highest tax rate. And that would be some number, that the effective tax rate, some number that approaches 23%. And the people that spent zero money, they would get a rebate check in their account for something probably a little bit above $500 a month today, just to replace it.
So that's Ron Paul endorse the fair tax?
I talked to him about this, and he said, yes, I support the fair tax. I would vote for the fair tax. He said also that he would vote for a flat tax. Whatever takes money out of the hands of government is how he answered it.
Okay, but you don't endorse Ron Paul?
What's that?
But you don't endorse Ron Paul?
At this point, I have not endorsed anyone. And
okay.
I count Ron Paul a friend. I work with him on a regular basis. He's a good, solid constitutionalist. I'm glad that he's pushing on auditing the friend. And he's an important element in this debate.
See, because I like Mike Huckabee personally, and I wanted to go to the straw poll because I bought his book and I'm reading it now, and I'd like to give it to sign. So if you could arrange that, that'd be great.
Let's invite him here. That'd be the easy way to do
Yeah,
that.
I'd love to get Mike Huckabee across the way. That'd be awesome.
I did a little TV with Mike Huckabee during the straw poll, and I like him a lot. He was he still is for the fair tax. Actually, we had this conversation. It comes down to this: 3 big things that need to happen And Mike Huckabee is right there with me in every one of them. We're working together, and sometimes you'll see a television commercial that'll come up that has Huckabee talking about repealing Obamacare, and then it shows the scene of me calling for the same thing. I didn't even know they were turning that into a commercial when somebody pointed that out to me. But, so here's three big things that need to happen in my view, and Mike Huckabee and I are exactly on the same page, and it's just what we were talking about. Repeal Obamacare, that's out front on that, and the fair tax, he ran on it, he advanced it a lot in this country. We need somebody to run for president to do that very strongly. Herman Cain is. I'd like to add one or two others to that. And the third thing is to pass a balanced budget amendment. And if we can do those three things and do nothing else, we'll go a long, long ways towards fixing this country. So, thanks for bringing up the fair tax.
Thank you very much.
Congressman, my name is John Cook. I came over here from Carroll, and I wanted to ask something based on something that I saw last Sunday on Face the Nation, and also kind of relates to what you were talking before about the economy. They have Mark Zandi, who was an economic advisor to John McCain on the program, and anyway, he was asked on the program whether a double-dip recession is likely. And he said that to prevent that, Congress has to follow through on the debt ceiling in a reasonably graceful way, I kind of like that word graceful, in November. And if they don't, then we're going to get more downgrades, more turmoil in the stock market, and we're done, we're back in recession. The second thing Congress has to do is provide some additional support to the economy in the very near term, extending the payroll tax holiday and extending the emergency unemployment insurance benefits, both of which expired at the end of this year. And if that's not done, it will cost the economy in calendar year 2012 about a percentage point of GDP growth, and that translates into about 1 million jobs by the end of 2012. So if we don't do those things, then the number of people employed will be 1 million fewer than otherwise would be the case. My question then is, will you support extending the payroll tax holiday through 2012 and extending emergency unemployment benefits? Thank you.
Thanks, John. I missed the name of the economist.
Mark Zandi. Mark Zandi.
Okay. I heard you say it, but I just forgot, I guess. All right. I don't know him, and I've not read any of his material. He gets media, so that means he's got credibility, or he wouldn't be there. What you've read to me runs just about directly contrary to what I believe. And in that, we did that last fall in a lame duck session. We created the payroll tax holiday, extended unemployment benefits out to 99 weeks, and we did $212 billion in transfer payments that hardly got a debate in Congress or in the public. All of that in exchange for extending the Bush tax brackets to pass the next election to December 31st of 2012, and to get some much needed relief on the estate tax. I am of the belief that this economy is not going to recover from handing out borrowed money and asking people to spend it. I believe that it recovers from production, increasing our production. And as one who has tried to hire people that were on unemployment and found out that they became available when the unemployment was exhausted, it's hard to grow a business when you can't hire people because they are receiving unemployment checks. I recall when they closed the John Morrell plant in Sioux City, and there was a 90-day notice that it was going to be closed, and around 1,400 jobs were going to be lost. Right away, Governor Culver said, we need to extend unemployment benefits. And right away I said, we need to ask these people to find a job and help them find a job and seamlessly transition them from knowing they're going to be out of work in 90 days to being back at work for somebody else in 90 days. That's the difference in the two philosophies. One of them is it operates under the assumption that anybody that can work will work, no matter what they have to give up and from a public check in order to do that. But if you look at the data, people that are on unemployment will find a job the closer they get to the unemployment benefits running out. And the time that they spend looking for a job is also proportional to that deadline on the calendar. So it doesn't mean that I'm heartless. I have compassion for the taxpayers. And I didn't like the deal we made that last fall. I voted against it. I think we could have done a lot better than we did. The payroll tax holiday is a component of this that I didn't mention, and that's a central part of your question. How do we put that back in? That's always been a 50-50 match employer-employee. I actually think it all comes out of the employee side, because the employer would pay that to the employee if they didn't have to send it off to the federal government. But you do a 2% reduction in payroll tax, how do you ever put it back in? It becomes institutionalized then that the employer share of it contributes more, the employee less, and it strengthens the argument that one day you don't have any payroll tax. Meanwhile, it weakens our ability to provide the entitlements that are there that come out of that withholding. So my overall philosophy on this is, let's get the country back to work. Let's have a tax and a regulatory structure and some continuity, so that the investors that are sitting on trillions of dollars have the confidence to invest in them. That's where I stand on this, and I haven't slammed the door. I'll listen to all sides of this argument still, but that's the philosophy I bring to the debate. Thank you.
Congressman Doug Peters, I'm from Denison here. And two questions basically. The first one should be fairly easy to answer. I saw you at the straw poll with Michelle Bond. Can you talk her into coming here? That's
Maybe.
question one. And the other one is that you did touch on the illegal immigration issue. I know your stand on it and so on. But I guess, what is the likelihood of Congress finally addressing this issue seriously? They keep kicking it down the road. Both sides got interest in it, we know that. Republican presidents, Democratic presidents, everybody's got an answer of why not to. It isn't just people coming over, it's their abuse of medical, their abuse of the education system, and, I know there's innocent parties here, children, but what are we gonna do about it, seriously?
Well, that is a big question. I'm just writing a number down here to make sure I don't forget it. I've been on the Immigration Committee now into the 9th year, and previous 4 years I spent as the ranking member of the Immigration Subcommittee, so the House Judiciary Committee, the non-lawyer of the Judiciary Committee, which gives some people hope that maybe one can have a voice in the middle of the sea of lawyers. But some will argue that Congress is deadlocked on immigration policy. Because we didn't pass a comprehensive piece of legislation doesn't mean that we're deadlocked. It could very well mean that the American people rejected the changes that were offered to them, and I believe that's what happened. The switchboards were shut down in the United States Senate in either 06 or 07 when they tried to bring comprehensive immigration reform. It is, at this point, I think, an understanding that when someone says comprehensive immigration reform, it really means that some of the components will be amnesty. And so that's how the verbiage changes in the country, and the vocabulary shifts, and the meanings of the vocabulary shift a little bit. I spent the last 4 years fighting off any changes that they were trying to bring from the Nancy Pelosi, Obama, Harry Reid side of this philosophy. And I did some pretty difficult inside the subcommittee room battles with them when they were trying to bring it in. At one time, I found myself sitting, I had 2 other Republicans that came to the committee, and they offered an amendment left, offered amendment left. That was when they gavelled into the hearing. I had a grocery cart of amendments, and it was a wire cart the size of a grocery cart. And my staff had stayed up most of the night to write those amendments. We found out they were bringing an amnesty bill about 10, 11 o'clock at night, and we had a lot of ideas, and we put them all in printed form, and I sat there alone and offered amendment after amendment. And by 9:30 that night, they'd been mad at me for a long time. They were mad at each other for the last couple of hours. Some of them walked out, they didn't have the votes for it to pass, and I let it go to final passage, and they couldn't pass the bill. Later on they did, but the price for it was high enough that they didn't bring anything else the rest of the session. If Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, and Harry Reid, though, had been determined to bring their version of immigration reform through, they could have done so in the last 2 years. They did not. Now the things that they're talking about that they would bring for immigration reform are more of the political nature. It's not for the policy change, or they would have done it if they wanted the policy change. For me, I want to reestablish the rule of law. And some of the things that I would do, the number one bill that We have not yet introduced it in this Congress, partly because there's so much competition for the attention span of the country, trying to find that right piece there. Cassie is essential in working with me on that, just reminding her that no honeymoon till we get this done, Cassie. And but what it is, a piece of legislation that I put together a few years ago, thinking this, that we already, that it's been established within the last week that the Department of Homeland Security doesn't want to enforce immigration. They've issued a de facto amnesty order, and the Justice Department doesn't want to enforce immigration law. They've sued Arizona.